Okay, so my dear friends, I've been given about 30 minutes by a course facilitator to showcase my project. What I thought was I was actually told to, stick to a format. Like I have to talk about my idea, I have to talk about how I'm going to sponsor it, how I intend going about with it. But I'll prefer to take a different approach. So rather than just, telling you about what my project is all about and everything, I prefer it to be a bit more interactive. I'm not going to go into the details as to how I'm going to execute the project and stuff. I'm going to be talking more about the core idea and how it's going to impact all of us. Before I proceed, there is one short disclaimer. So, as you can see on the screen, right, I haven't been able to actually figure out a name for my project because it's not just something which deals with the environment about, it's not just about some sort of social impact. It deals with multiple issues. And uh, as we proceed with the presentation, you might feel that what I'm speaking is slightly absurd, it's illogical, and it does not have necessary evidence to support it. Or you might feel I'm bombarding you with too much of, too much about the environment or too much of biology. I just want to tell you guys that whatever I'm going to be sharing with you soon, all of this, these are essential prerequisites for you to understand what my project is all about. And I assure you, I have no intention of just simply bombarding you with random facts. At the end of these 30 minutes, I can vouch that you're going to have zero regrets for being patient to understand what my idea is really about. So let's roll into it. So this is okay. I just added this to just represent the current global scenario. So I'll ask you a simple question. When I just talk about environmental degradation, all of us, right from when we joined primary school, we've been told that the environment is crucial, how mankind is degrading the environment. We've been taught about the various factors which degrade the environment, what are the measures we can adopt. And basically, all of us are familiar with it, right? Plant trees, save water, stop air pollution, reduce the usage of fossil fuels, try to grow green, and all the basic stuff. But until recently, I didn't know of a very scary thing which existed, and that is I came across the fact that one of the biggest contributors to climate change is the meat and dairy industry. Now, I get a reaction. Okay, but even when I heard it for the first time, I had the same reaction. I was like, the meat and dairy industry and climate change, are these two even related? And even if they are, what's the amount of impact it has? Does it even have a significant role to play? And a fun fact, the amount of pollution caused by the meat and dairy industry is equal to the pollution caused by all the cars, boats, ships, airplanes, trains put together. And I'm not making this up. It is a proven scientific fact. It's just that people, common people like us don't know about it. So I'm going to be explaining you as to why it has, such a bad impact on the environment. And I'm going to be providing you with solutions, and I'm going to be dealing with a couple of other things which you'll understand as I proceed. So, why is meat bad for the environment? There are these pointers you can see on the screen, which are going to justify why it's so. So, the basic answer is if you see the amount of resources which go into the making of one portion of meat, it's tremendous. Okay, so just imagine there's some a portion of forest somewhere. So people just come in with bulldozers and everything which run on fossil fuels. They cut down the forest. Then next they start growing crops over there. So there's food grain and all which is grown. They pump in lots of water. They put in loads of fertilizers. They basically do everything whatever is required for a good crop. And when the grains are ready, instead of providing it to some hungry person who can eat it, they feed it to an animal. So there's a small animal which is being fed with food, grain, water. It's been fed for months, for years. And at the end of the day, on one day, it is just slaughtered, and one non vegetarian person gets to eat. So if you see the figures on the screen, 1 kg of beef requires 15,400 liters of water on an average. You can see the amount of carbon footprint it leaves. And this is what basically makes it so bad for the climate. So the food, the water, the resources, which are supposed to be, you could say, diverted towards raising crops for humans, are given to an animal. That animal is given multiple servings of vegetarian food, and at the end of the day, you get one non-vegetarian meal ready. So you can see basically for that one meal to be prepared, it takes months or sometimes years of feeding, maintaining animals, and all associate and activities associated with animal husbandry. I'll just continue talking. I'll just request you to keep glancing at the screen. So I've just collected different facts. So it might not be quite in sync with what I say, but it will give you a fair idea of what I'm trying to express to you. So this is another proven scientific theory. We've always been told by our parents, don't leave the shower on, or if there's any leaking tap in the house, just get it fixed, or save paper, try to go digital. Um, actually, if you want to save the figure mentioned on the screen, try not to include a serving of meat in your meal. I respect the people who actually, resort to these efforts, about the showers and the car, the examples I cited on the screen. But the blunt truth, the harsh truth is all of these efforts are actually quite meager. If you see the impact, you could be doing all these things, and just owing to the food you consume, you could actually be causing more pollution than a person who does all of these nonsensical activities and is on a plant-based diet. Yeah. There is another, I'm sorry, this image is quite disturbing. I'll just proceed to the next slide and I'll just read out what's stated. It's the amount of resources which go into, creating one non-vegetarian meal. In the same amount of resources, you can feed 10, on an average, 10 vegetarians. So the food, which is supposed to go to some, as I mentioned in the beginning, to some hungry child or some person who hasn't, eaten a meal in days, it's been fed to an animal. Right now, the human population is about 7 billion, and on an average, 70 billion animals are killed every year for meat. So I just have a simple question, if these animals range from like chickens to cows, so let's say on an average animal consumes as much food as a human in one meal. If we have the resources and capacity to feed 10 times more the animals, why can't we feed 7 billion people? Why still there hunger and, nearly about 7 million people annually, they die owing to uh, poverty related issues and due to malnutrition. Uh, on an average, you can read, right, an American, America's meat consumption is nearly 3 times the global average. And today, America is one of the leading countries when it comes to pollution owing to the meat and dairy industry. And this fact, right, you can see the figures, they're so shocking. Like it clearly states, right? You could just see the ratio 50,000 versus 250. It is clearly evident that it's not just a cause which is harming the environment, it's also a crime against humanity. So you're committing about 70 billion murders per year. At the same time, you're killing people owing to uh, hunger. And the sad part is no one is really willing to speak about it. So what other impacts does it have? So to grow grain for the animals, there are crops which are, the animals need to be fed. So there is so much of water which is being pumped out of rivers, which is not used by humans, but it is just pumped into the crop. So there's this grain which has to be fed with water, then that grain has to be fed to the animal. And after this long process, again, you get just one plain serving of meat, which has deprived many people of their food, which has, I, if you'll be seeing in due course, all of these facts, mind you, are from credible sources. My facilitator had instructed me specifically to try and cite the sources. But the thing is, honestly, I started collecting this data like since a long, long time, even before I joined ILP. So I'm sorry, there is no such evidence to support this, but I assure you it's all from credible sources. And if you search the net or, just go to some credible place, a person who knows about this topic, you'll be able to verify these figures. So there are these articles which many people conveniently choose to ignore when it lands up in their news feed. Um, I don't think so. We have time to read everything, but yeah, you can just glance at the headline. That will give you an idea. Okay. There's one additional reason why it's actually not sustainable in the long run. So, and that reason is uh, the crop has to be perfect. Okay. So if the crop doesn't come up well, if it has certain diseases or something for whatever reason it doesn't work out, the farmer is going to lose on to his livelihood. Okay, he needs to feed the animals. They need to be kept feeding until they enter the slaughterhouse. So what they do is they resort to using loads and loads of fertilizers. So what these fertilizers do, as all of us know, chemical fertilizers, they degrade the quality of the soil. They mix with water, which eventually, just leaches into the water bodies and damages the local ecosystem over there. And it is estimated that a major chunk of the arable land soon is not going to be fit for agriculture because of the excessive use of fertilizers. And it's this meat industry, it basically runs on the phenomena of pumping. So the crop is pumped with fertilizers, it's pumped with pesticides, the animals are pumped up with injections like hormonal injections to make fatten them up. And these crops are genetically modified. So there's been a study which states when the animal have been fed with grains which are genetically modified, they have higher muscle mass. So there's this another industry which runs in the background, which sells modified seeds, which are used by farmers to grow crops, fed to the animal. And all of these genetically modified things eventually end up in the stomach if you choose to eat meat. Okay. So now let's talk about the impact it has on the greenhouse gas emissions and what role it has to play in deforestation. I think the last line should be of major interest. We always get news, right? Said some rainforest has burned, so many animals have died, so many trees were lost. I agree that causes a lot of destruction. People who do this destruction, the manual destruction, conveniently don't tell you about it. On an average, we lose nearly 1 acre of forests per second. And that is a shocking figure because you can just estimate the number of trees which were cut as I finished speaking the sentence. And no one's really going to tell you about this. It's we were always told, right? Deforestation happens when cities have to be expanded, highways have to be expanded, or there's some mining activity. No one really tells you that animal husbandry causes deforestation. And I get the fact, you might be finding it uh, quite absurd. Like until today, I presume most of you didn't know such a phenomena existed. And here I'm just telling you, bombarding you with all these shocking figures and shocking facts. I totally understand you're in a confused state of mind, but again, I'm repeating myself. All of these figures are 100% authentic. They're from verified sources. And the reason I'm here is more and more people need to know about this. So it's this shocking, and we need to soon have a large number of voices to speak out for this cause. So agriculture is again associated with stubble burning and all these other activities. I won't go into the details. Then next comes fishing. Okay, so most people say, hey, fishing has a lot less cruelty. You don't have to kill the animal, and it's just naturally produced. in the sea, and or we have our good old fish farms, which give us nice, decent fish. The thing is, if you read the second line, it says nearly 5 times the amount is vital. So they catch, it's self-explanatory, right? And if you see about the fishes which are raised in fish farms, they are one of the most unhealthy things you can ever eat. And there have been studies which have stated that when fishes are, in the fish farms, they are raised in barrels and ponds where there are too many fish in a constrained space. It has a psychological impact on the fish. So as a result of the frustration, they eventually start tearing off each other's fins. They start biting each other, and they do have very limited scope for growth. So they are you in a way torturing the animal, and even if you eat that animal, the fish, you're not going to get the desired nutrition. And also there was this documentary I had seen, which basically stated, which was telling that all these big fish companies, they actually have bonded slave labor. So most of these companies are based in Europe, where there's a lot of demand for fish. So they typically go to these poor Asian or African nations where labors are, they are picked up, and once they come in Europe, they have their own nasty ways of dealing with those people. They become bonded labor. So the marine and fish industry is responsible for human cruelty as well. So these are the fish farms I talked about. Some of you might put forth the justification that there are certain people, not all fishes are subjected to this cruelty, and there are loads of places, people don't overfish and they just take as much as they want. Um, it's a simple phenomena. Just imagine you are in a room with 10 other people, and a person just barges in with a stick and starts beating you up, and you start crying, and then he's like, hey, there are 11 of you, and I'm not beating 10 people, I'm just beating one, you alone. What's the problem? This is like that. Just for your, even if a major chunk of, I'm not saying a major chunk is in a good condition, but even if someone puts forth that argument, the point is, even if it's a meager portion, at the end of the day, these animals too have their own lives, and they're a part of the ecosystem. They have a role to play rather than be on your plate. So even if a small portion of the industry, or even if a negligible portion of the industry subjects any animal to this cruelty, I think as a human and being one of the smartest species on the earth, you need to voice out for those who aren't as capable as you. Okay, this slide is going to be just for about 2 3 seconds. So if you want to close your eyes, you can do that. Um, okay, I'll just okay. Let's just skip this. Okay. Please just ignore the slide. I want to talk about the previous slide. So I'll just take a minute and talk about the cruelty animals are subjected to in farms. So let's talk about chicken. Okay, I'm sure most of us eat chicken, or rather, I used to eat chicken. So when a chicken is born, okay, all these male chicks, they are, as soon as they are born, they are immediately killed because they are of no use, and all the female chicks are kept because they are going to be laying eggs, and eventually they're going to be killed. And these chickens, most of them are just stuffed into tight cages where they don't even have enough space to move. They dirty themselves. All their droppings, defecation is on their bodies. They are like, most of them don't even have the space to move. And again, the frustration factor comes in, and they start pecking at each other. They start picking each other's feathers. As a result of which, their beaks in big their beaks are chipped off. So babies, they're born, either they are killed, and if they are fortunate enough to live, I'd actually call it unfortunate because they are tortured and then brutally murdered. S- some of you might argue that, if I'm a vegetarian, I don't consume any animals or something, why is this presentation relevant for me? If you're a vegan, I'll say you're doing a good job. If you're a vegetarian, that is, you consume plant-based foods and you have milk and milk products, you are still equally contributing towards animal cruelty. Um, if you actually, if you are okay seeing some really negative and torturous content, try searching on Google how a cow is impregnated. So, like all other animals, a cow only lactates when she's pregnant. So, what really happens is when she's pregnant, a big rod of metal is actually shoved into her genitals uh, by the farmer. They typically put their hand inside the animal's body. There's a gun which has bull semen, which hits the cow's internal organs, impregnates the cow. When the calf is born, it is pulled away from its mother. It's not allowed to have its share of the milk. And then some machine is put to the cow's body, which sucks the milk till it's dry, and it's actually painful for the animal. And when the cow stops lactating, she is sent to the slaughterhouse. So the cow has been giving income to the farmer for years, but end of the day, he's a businessman. So the day the animal is useless for him, the cow is sent to the slaughterhouse. And like chickens again, if when a calf is born, if it's a male calf, it is sent to the leather industry because its skin is soft and supple and it's easier to make leather products out of it. And if it's a female, she's gonna undergo the same plight as mother. Now you must have read the stuff on the screen. Um, it's stated meat is carcinogenic. Earlier, there was, denial to this, when studies used to pop up, the meat and dairy industry used to just blatantly deny it. And gradually, more and more evidence has started to collect against this that it causes cancer. So it's quite evident in the US, wherein, the rate of cancer is abnormally high. And that's one of the reasons you can attribute is their high level of meat consumption. Okay, so before we proceed, I have a short video clip over here. It's about 2 to 3 minutes long. Um, by now, most of you might have this question in your mind that, we've always been told non-vegetarian food is nutritious. So we require milk for vitamin D. We require our chicken for the protein. We require fish for our omega and fatty acids. And it's vegetarian food, which is deficient in nutrition. So I think after watching this video, you might want to rethink over that. Um, I'll play it. Okay. Is it? Is the sound coming?
It's not. I think if you stop sharing and then when you share again, click on the audio. There's like a button where you can share audio as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I do it all the time. Don't worry. Literally every single time.
Steak. That's what
Is it audible now? Okay.
It certainly
Good.
is. Yeah.
steak. That's what a man eats.
Made from stuff guys need.
Eat like a man, man. There's no one that can relate to that better than I do because I've lived in that world. Steak is for man.
Go me!
They showed us commercials, burgers, George Foreman with the grill,
Yeah.
and the big sandwiches and all that stuff.
Eat like a man and be full like a man.
This is great, great marketing by the meat industry.
Serious man food.
Selling that idea that real men eat meat.
You look like more of a man with a quarter pounder in your hand.
But you got to understand that's marketing. That's not based on reality. I ate a lot of meat. I ate my 10, 15 eggs a day. And, I had my 250 grams of protein a day because I weigh 250 pounds.
One and only
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But as I got older and as I started reading up on it, I recognized the fact that you really don't have to get your protein from meat or from animals, as far as that goes. So we start going more in a direction of a vegetarian kind of a diet. Now we're doing it the right way, with the right spices. All of a sudden, I love it much more than the meat. And, the cholesterol went down to around 109. It was the lowest that it ever was in my entire life, at almost 69. If you go to people and say, you must stop eating meat, they will say, fuck you. Who the fuck are you to tell me how to eat? But if you explain it, say, hey, why don't you try once a week? Just chill it with the meat. 50 years ago, no one talked about, hey, maybe you should just get your protein from vegetables. But now, there's many athletes, professional athletes in all kinds of different sports that have done extremely well staying away from animal foods.
Lewis Hamilton wins the German Grand Prix.
We all want to feel great. We all want to look great, have more energy. The most important thing is about having the right fuel in your body. I can't remember feeling this great in my whole 32 years of my life.
Okay, so I'm sure we are fans of at least one of the people seen over here. Um, the reason why I chose to show this video was, I'm not a qualified nutritionist, so some of you might say, it's not justified that I speak about sports nutrition and make a claim that vegetarian food is good for you. But I just have one simple question. This evidence, it speaks for itself. When the world's most elite sportsmen are able to perform on a plant-based diet, why can't we do the same? If you've ever been to to a gym, there's this one person who keeps harping, you need to eat your chicken, you need to have meat, or who is constantly trying to sell you the idea that vegetarians are weak. At least it's common in India. Okay, so we have um, a lot of vegetarians over here, and there's still this, sort of idea which exists that vegetarian food it lacks nutrition, it's deficient in protein, and
Steak.
it's
That's what a man.
sorry, and it's not going to help you perform better in sports. So an additional reason why meat is bad for you, as I told you, right, animals they stay in very unhygienic conditions. So it is very obvious, owing to lack of movement, restriction of activity, and the cramped conditions they stay in, there's a strong likelihood that there are going to be loads of diseases cropping up. And the farmer is going to try to ensure the animals don't die. They survive until they come to your plate. So they are fed with tons and tons of antibiotics which float in their bloodstream. And when you consume this food, these antibiotics come in your bloodstream. So, God forbid, if you get some disease and the doctor gives you some drug, owing to the abnormally, okay, not abnormally, you're still alive, but owing to the amount of antibiotics which are already floating in the bloodstream, it is hard for the drug to be effective, because there's so much of chemical content in the body that your body just doesn't know how to react with it, and the medicines eventually become ineffective because you sort of become immune, or you become drug resistant. There have been loads of studies which have um, highlighted the negative effects of eating meat. I'll just share one fun fact with you. Sometime between the 1940s and 1960s, and the tobacco industry actually put forth the propaganda that cigarettes are good for you. So during the Second World War, when a lot of youngsters were, outside in foreign lands, they were being sold with the idea that cigarette smoking is good for you and it makes you healthy. They even went to the extent of having commercials wherein the top sportsmen of those times were actually seen smoking cigarettes. And When that didn't work, they began approaching doctors. So they had commercials. You get these toothpaste ads stating 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste. So they used to have ads like so and so number of doctors recommend that you have cigarettes of this particular brand. And for years, they kept denying that their cigarettes cause cancer because the industry had a lot of money. So it was easy for them to market. And eventually, when the evidence became too much, that industry got kicked out and the meat industry took its place. So these guys, if you recollect, they tell you first like a red meat is good for you. Then they came up with a theory that red meat is bad. Then they were like, you should try white meat. After white meat, they are saying, eggs are nice. After, there was some evidence against eggs. They are just like, you exclude the yolk and have the egg whites. Then they are like, milk is bad, good. You need it for your calcium. When there's evidence against milk, there's like, low fat milk, slim milk, skimmed milk, this milk, that milk, and God knows how many different varieties of milk. I personally did a lot of research about vegetarian foods, plant-based foods to be specific, and I've reached a conclusion, which is backed by scientific evidence, that if you have the right proportion of uh, vegetarian items on your platter, you will get all essential nutrients your body requires, which are enough to keep diseases away and enable athletic performance. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. So you might ask one major question as why was this information concealed? I think I just answered it when I cited the gimmicks adopted by the tobacco industry. There are billions of dollars at stake over here. So the vicious cycle runs as follows. So a lot of people get employment when the animals are raised, right? So you need to raise crops, you need people to look after them, and lots of activities. Then when the meat is processed, there's another industry involved in it, which just basically packages the food and makes it nice and appealing and puts them on the shelves of the supermarket. And after eating all of these foods, when you become unwell, then there's the pharmacy industry, which is ready to offer you medicines for any disease you name. And it works beautifully for the media as well, who can the media, you recollect these articles in the newspaper, they just talk about some fad diet. And I don't know, I just find those things quite weird because their diets keep changing like every week, every month. So they can give us a new story like every single day, and they never have a fixed stance. So you can see in the chart like one animal, there are so every part is useful. It's just sad as to why this, it's such a big propaganda. It's I mean it's wonderful. I'm sorry to use this word wonderful, but the way they've managed to keep it hidden from people, it's so this showcase is for a socio or environmental impact. Well, I don't think it's just that it affects the environment. It's there have been studies which have highlighted that a plant-based diet is cheaper on your pocket. It's gonna make you a lot healthier. I'm not saying that the industry is just gonna get wiped out soon, but gradually I hope there is a movement which will enable the grain to be allocated to people and hungry children and not just animals. It's it helps you combat animal cruelty, and the best part about it is I just have a question. Okay, if imagine a year back in 2020, someone, during the lockdown, someone just messages, like, please do something for the environment. You can't go out and start planting trees. You can't, basically all the measures we know, installing solar panels on your house, planting trees, segregating your waste, going out for protest marches. This is one of the easiest solutions. Like, how easy is that? You just choose not to eat one portion of meat. You've saved so many gallons of water, and goodness knows, the list is endless. It's just got so many advantages, and end of the day, you're gonna be healthier. Okay, I keep telling people, like, if you talk about a debate of vegetarian versus non-vegetarian food, there might be someone who is smarter than you and who might defeat you in a debate state, proving that non-vegetarian food is more nutritious. But Mother Nature is never going to design our bodies in such a way that we thrive on a diet which damages the environment. And you might argue that, oh, there are lions and so many carnivorous animals. Well, mind you, a lion doesn't go and cut trees in the forest, nor does he go up to the deer and say, hey, please, could you please produce 4 more babies so my cubs can eat on them next month? Humans rear animals and they don't eat what is readily available to them. They are greedy, so they create more and more animals, they kill them and they eat them. These are three documentaries which are my recommendations. I'd suggest, if you, I'll be blunt over here. Not many of you will be actually interested to watch this stuff when you go on Netflix, and I totally get it. Okay, I'm passionate about this cause, and I wouldn't expect the same from everyone. But if you can, please just try and watch What the Health. It's gonna be an eye opener, I assure you. And for those of you who must have already seen it, you know what I'm talking about. So, how can you help this cause? Um, You can just do one simple thing, okay? In about a minute or so after I'm done, I'm going to put something in the chat box, which is basically a small form. I request you to fill it. It won't take more than a minute. You must have noticed during this presentation, um, I didn't speak much about, how I intend funding. I didn't speak at all, how I intend funding this project, or what's next. The motive behind doing so was, there were two specific reasons. Number one, I feel ethically, as a speaker, when I take 30 minutes of your time, it's not that you just come over here, I just throw away facts at you, this is my project, this is how I intend doing it, so and so and so, and you just walk off. You should feel that, I feel as an audience, you should have something to value add. And I don't really honestly know how much of it you've really understood, absorbed, or you've chosen to accept. But I can definitely assert that now you guys know that there is this, as the first slide stated, an imposter which has to be revealed. I've told you, I've given you a solution for environment, combating climate change. And if none of the reasons appeal to you, please do it for the sake of your health. After you watch What the Health and even Game Changers, you'll be shocked. Shocked. I mean, you'll be literally shocked to the core as to the amount of havoc it creates in your body. So what you can do is basically, I'll be rolling out a form which in which I seek feedback. I'd request all of you to fill it for the simple reason. My topic, right? Its solution is quite simple, but to express the idea to people, it's quite complicated. Like I had to take up, I had to spend a lot of time making this PPT, and I was fortunate enough to get a 30-minute window to, I think I've lost the time limit, to express this to you. And I want to learn to do it effectively. So I want you guys to honestly tell me how you found it, whether you could understand the idea, and basically how the presentation was. Um, so I am done.